So there are two things. Two things. The first one is that Adal, ADAL, the Active Directory Authentication Library, which was the library that we used to use in .NET,
and it's still kicking around, by the way. So
it has not gotten any. It has not gotten any new features since last June 30th. That was the cutoff date, and as of June 2022, so just over a year from now, Adal will be gone.
Or 2 months.
So you've got 13, 14 months to start planning your deprecation. So probably something that you want to start to think about, and that's one of the things that we're going to look at today is we've got an old app that uses ADAL, and we're going to look at just what it takes to migrate it over to MSAL in .NET Framework, because we know that there's still a lot of .NET Framework apps out there, obviously, and so we want to make sure that folks are covered when they go and open up that crusty project from 10 years ago that they need to migrate, that they at least have some idea of where to go and what to do. And so that's what we're going to be doing probably for the next couple of days.
Well, a couple of streams, right? A few streams.
We've got an API, we've got a web app. We're going to take essentially the old samples, since presumably that was a starting point for a lot of folks in the first place. We're going to take those two and we're going to start to move them around. And see if we can't get them updated into MSAL. So
we'll also upgrade them, update them, expand them a little bit to make more sense as an end-to-end scenario. Because the current sample, do you want to open the current sample and show people what we have there, like where you got it from, so they can have a reference on the starting point on GitHub if you have it handy?
Yeah. So if you want to go look at where it started from. Here is the original. Here's the sample that we're going to be starting from today. Now it's been archived, so you got to go look at the. You got to go switch branches from the archive branch to the master branch to see the sample as it was before it was archived.
Oh, that's a good question over here on the stream now. Dumb question. There's no dumb questions, my friend. Feel free to ask. How do I know if an app uses Edel instead of MSAL?
Good question. So that's the thing about Adal. There are a lot of apps that are using Adal that don't actually know it. And a lot of the reason for that is because a lot of other packages have taken dependencies on ADAL. And so if you're using a different package that needed identity, which for a lot of Microsoft stuff, that's a lot of them. If you're using a different package, there are still packages out there that reference ADAL. And so it may not be immediately obvious. But the names and the namespaces are different. And so we'll take a look at that today. It's called, so the old one is called, God, I can't even remember anymore. It's been so long. This isn't even the right service. If you look in your references, you should see Microsoft.identitymodel.clients.active directory. So sadly, we are in Visual Studio today, which means I can't zoom the UI, which is pretty unfortunate because I don't want to have
man, honestly.
But
I hate this.
See, when you look at your references, you'll see the Adal. This is the name of the Adal package. And this is old. This is what we want to move away from. And you'll notice, of course, too, this project still uses things like ON and some other pretty old stuff too. But so you'll look in your references and see if you're using identitymodel.clients.active directory, then your app is using ADAL, and we need to move it. The thing we're going to be moving to is called MSAL, which is Microsoft.identity.client. If you're going to move your app wholesale to something like .NET Core, you've got other tools available if you're going to do sort of a full rewrite. But I have yet to see anybody successfully migrate like a .NET Framework app to .NET Core like 3 or higher without a bunch of drama.
There is, I mean, it was even worse before .NET Core 2 or Net Standard 2. But now you can do it, but it takes a lot of effort. And it depends on the app, right? So if it's a web forms app, which I had that question before, there's no one-to-one migration because there's no web forms in .NET Core. So technically the UI, you have to rebuild the UI from scratch, and people have dependencies on third-party tools as well. They don't even exist. So you have to rewrite the whole thing in MVC or Azure pages. APIs are not that hard. I think APIs are fairly easy to migrate, considering the stuff that you can do. But I've seen some horrific things. I had a customer once that would return ASP.NET views, the Razor pages from an API. So they had a dependency in ASP.NET inside their API. Rather than returning the JSON and then the front end consuming that JSON and rendering the UI, they were rendering the whole view they were returning the whole view from the API. And then they were just rendering that in the front end. I was like, why? Why would you do that?
I mean,
it depends on your
is that
scenario.
is that really that different from? I mean, ultimately we send tokenized HTML back down to the client, right? In MVC. It's just that we're not doing it ourselves.
Yes.
So
Man, a lot of warnings over there. What happened to you?
I literally cloned it and opened it. All I did before the show was clone it and make sure Visual Studio is up to date. So we're on like Visual Studio 16 point whatever the latest one is, 16.9.4. So updated today.
16.10 is bringing some really exciting stuff about identity. I'm not going to say anything else. Just keep your eyes peeled for the next update.
See, I don't know what all the warnings are. I wonder if it'll build. That's probably the first place to start.
Just ignore them. They're just warnings.
They're just warnings. I turn these off anyway. Nobody needs
32 those. Only. I mean, this is all.
So it is still.
Stuff.
It is still breaking. So let's take a look at where we're breaking. So hang on. We gotta fix this font. Oh my god.
Oh,
it's awful. Is that Courier? Yes. Oh, jeez. That's painful.
Is that the default one? Devs only care about errors, not warnings. Exactly, Bolt. Somebody else's problem.
I don't think I have Cascadia whatever installed.
Oh, we're gonna spend the next half an hour, people, showing you how to set up your developer environment, so you don't have to go through the pain.
Well, if you don't want to, I mean, if you have to use Visual Studio for some reason, presumably you're
Comic Sans
set up. But
I think we need to ban Bolt for 30 seconds because of the Comic Sans.
Okay. So it looks like it basically looks like a lot of our packages are missing.
Go and do a restore while I say hi to Damien. Damien, what's up, buddy? Hope you're good. And TRP8472. I don't know if that should be reading something. Like trap? LOL. Trap something. I'm not that hip. You're doing good. That's what you guys are working on.
So we do have later versions.
Are you gonna be brave enough to just go and update everything? Come on, do it.
If we look at the things that are changing, the ASP.NET ones are all point releases, so that's good. The Edel is moving to 5.2.9, which is a big jump. It's two versions,
but we don't really care about it since we're gonna be replacing it anyway.
I do want to kind of see I want to see what this thing's supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So let's update. I'm going to go ahead and update our packages. And yeah, we're going to, in worst case, we'll just go reclone it. So let's go pull these down and see. So we'll update all of our We're going to go get the newest versions of these packages and see what it breaks.
Mr. Extremely is still asking questions about our headphones, and very good question, to be honest. I actually have two sets of headphones. I have my QC35s wired. They're the version 2. And I got them about 2 years ago, and I think it's a solid investment. You can wear them for hours on end and don't feel like you're wearing anything. And then on my other desktop, while JP is installing his packages, on my other desk, I've got these Sony's, which are the MDR 7506, which are stunning. Not as comfortable, but they're cheaper. About $120 all in all.
Yeah, nice.
It's like wearing nothing at all. Yeah. That's all I'm wearing when I do my my meetings. Just my headphones. I'll let everything else to the viewer's imagination.
This is why I turned my computer screen around while we're in a meeting and he's sharing video.
This is the only time I see JP in real life.
I still haven't met you. We've been on the same team for a year, and I still have not met you in person yet.
So close, man. There's going to be a team get-together soon. It's going to be mental. once that happens.
So we got our we've got our app. We still got 2 errors. It looks like maybe a signature changed for the on authentication failed method. So let's see if there's a new one somewhere. Let's see. On authentication failed. It looks like the signature here doesn't match. So on authentication failed is going to be. Let's see. It's a
What
func
is
of
what is expecting?
a func of authentication failed notification of type OpenID Connect message, OpenID Connect authentication options, and a task. So we've got our authentication failed. It looks like we're going to need well, you're right. We are going to get rid of this here momentarily, but just to see if we can make it build. I just want to see if it'll build and work in its current state. Let's see. I guess the other way we could do this. Let's see. And then we need a task. Okay. So func authentication failed notification, OpenID Connect message, and OpenID Connect options task is the context. So authentication failed notification, OpenID Connect message, OpenID Connect authentication options task. That is our context.
Can you actually you could probably comment out the existing implementation and then let Visual Studio implement that for you, right?
Yeah, that's true. Let's try that. Authentication failed. Was it plus equals? God, it's been so long. Oh.
Authentication failed equals.
I don't think let me do it.
Oh, it needs to assign. No, I was saying comment lines 86 to 92, and then uncomment line 79, and then right click on the underline and say implement it for me, or create method, or export method, or something. That should work.
Oh no, I think we matched. Oh no, we still don't match signature. So no overload matches.
IntelliCode code can write code for you. Yes, it can do in certain cases. What does it do?
Not in this case.
Well, you need to comment 86 to 92. That's why it doesn't do it, because it finds a method and then it blows up.
Comments. Okay, so
and then no
application failed.
I don't think you can do plus equal inside a property, can you?
Oh yeah, you're right. So, but it is still not giving me any sort of. It is not doing it for me. So
to the docs.
Probably aren't. I don't even know if they're going to be docs for this anymore. So okay, why doesn't it like this signature? Let's just fix that. So
yeah,
on authentication failed. Authentication failed notification. Yeah. Identity model protocols, OpenID Connect message. So that's the correct type. Connect options. OpenID Connect authentication options. Yeah, so that's all correct.
I think the task needs to be a separate property. There's a comma, or is that part of the tuple in the function? Is it returning the correct thing?
No, because it's well, so it's part of the func. So the first part of the func are these, and the output is the task, right?
Yes.
So that's what it's looking for.
What are you returning? I think Bolt is saying, are you returning the right thing? And can you do async on that?
Well, it says no overload is matching the delegate for func for our thing. So it's saying that no overload for on authentication failed, which is our method down here. It's matching. Is there another one somewhere? Surely there's not another one somewhere.
What happens if you open bracket there to see what? Yeah, so unauthenticated failed on the private static task. Open the bracket and see what options you're given.
What do you mean open the bracket? What does that mean?
Like remove the current parameters there and see what it asks you to provide.
Well, it's asking me for that. It's asking me for that
for the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean this is exactly what it's asking for. So then
it says you should remove the func because it tries to convert the method to a func.
So we're going to send in an authentication failed notification. I guess it's because it's not returning a task. Well, no, it is returning a task. So it's returning a task.
Uh-huh.
So this is our, let's see.
On
I'll
authentication
build
failed.
it.
Oh, when I'm just looking at that. On authentication failed. What does it do?
Let's see here. So where is our
One of them is
error
just
list?
taking a context.
So we've got our authentication failed delegate. And it's expecting an authentication failed notification of OpenID Connect message and options, which we've given it. So that's here. So this is what it should. This is what should be going in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
you want to check this gist out that I sent you on the chat? I wonder if that will work. It does it inline, but I don't know if that's a problem for now. It only passes a context.
Well, it just doesn't have a type for the context, right?
Yeah.
So then if from here we return task from result 0, then that should, yeah, so that's fine. So why doesn't it like, because our context is authentication failed notification, OpenID Connect message, OpenID Connect authentication options. One of the things that is interesting is it's giving me the fully qualified OpenID Connect message as if this is an incorrect type down here.
Yeah,
Microsoft
Bolt
Identity
said,
Model.
Are you using the correct references?
Oh, you know what? It's actually in, so it looks like it is a little bit different. So if we look at this one,
this is a different.
this is
different
identitymodel.protocols.openid connect message.
Not the one.
This is identitymodel.protocols.openid connect message. So it's in the OpenID Connect main namespace.
Mm-hmm.
So they're two different types.
There
so
you go.
Identity model protocols, then OpenID Connect, then OpenID Connect message. There we go.
Kaboom.
Let me put this back the way it was. On authentication failed. Okay.
Aha. No more error messages.
Then now I don't know the difference between identity model protocols OpenID message and identity model protocols OpenID Connect OpenID message, but
it should be fine because we're going to be replacing that anyway.
So does it build? Okay, and then we've got graph. Let's see. So we've got one other error, which is object reference required for non-static field method or property startup.graph graph resource ID. So where on earth is that coming from?
Graph.
I guess it's
static. Yes.
Okay.
Done and done.
So now we got to go get some. We got to go register a client so that we can have this. So we can actually run this. So we're going to use a web config.
Man, web config days, remember? Brings back so many memories.
Super old. Okay. So let me see here. I gotta get my let me get my screen up here so we can go see, and we'll go. Actually, I'll do it in this VM. Let's do that.
Hey, thanks everyone for helping us crowdsource the solution to this one. I think Bolt had the right thing. Are you using the correct using references? So pointed us to the right direction.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's get into my Azure Active Directory tenant here.
You know what? Should we give away an Azure voucher at the end of the stream? We could do that. There will be a question at the end of the stream. Stay with us until 10 o'clock and find out who the lucky winner will be. So we can do that. I mean, we have them. Why not?
Sure. Okay.
Yes.
So we're in our portal. So this is Azure AD. You could also get to this directly through the Azure portal, but if you want to go to the Azure AD portal, it's aad.portal.azure.com. And we're going to go register us an app here. So we got our app registrations. Just create a new one. Zoom this in a little bit. NetFX Ancient. That's what we'll call it. We'll just let people sign in from here. I don't know what the reply
With
URL is
direct
going to
URI,
be
yeah.
just yet because it's IIS Express.
It will be 44321 or something, isn't it? The usual port that they have. And you need two.
To be
You need one
honest,
for your web app and one for your API. Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
honestly, I have no idea what the reply URLs are going to be just yet. So,
Yes.
okay, so we need a client ID. So we got a client ID.
Yes.
Thank you for the sample GUID and the config. So we've got our client ID. Now we need a secret, which of course we're going to go create another secret that everybody's going to see here again. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, why they name it app key? God, talking about consistency on our samples, right? Should be client secret there. God,
Yeah. So
app
now
key. Do we
we
used
have
to
our
name them
app
app key
key.
back in the day?
I
Was
mean,
it me?
they've had 97,000 names. So, all right, so we've got our key, and then we're going to put in our tenant name. Of course, our tenant is our directory name. So this will be,
Yes.
and you can use the name like that. You can also use a custom domain if you've got one. So it looks like our redirect URI is already here in the settings, which is localhost 44322.
Oh no, I missed one number. Oh, so
So
close.
we're going to go back to our app registration, add a platform, add web. Those are our redirect URIs.
Those are direct URIs.
I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to require this. Although we do have an app key, so maybe we won't have to
Maybe
use
we don't.
implicit, which would be great. Yeah, that
Did
would be
not
great. So
Zan Mark say that we should try without the implicit flow because it's not the best, right?
we've got our web app, and because we're going to be calling an API, we need to go ahead and go register our API. So let's do that.
I know, Bolt. No implicit. We'll try to keep it as no implicit, but it's been a
We
while
will
since we
we will
did
do
.NET.
we will definitely do everything to prevent that. So let's create a new registration for our API. Oh wait, there's a preview. Try the new. Oh, that's app registration search. Never mind. So we'll call this NetFX Ancient API.
Does it bother you that you dismiss these every single time and it's still there the next time that you're there, even if you sign up for the preview bits?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly just ignore it. I don't even see them anymore.
It's just noise to me.
So we've got our NetFX, we've got our API registration.
Ancient.
And that's
Ancient. It's not ancient. Ancient is like 30-year-old code. This is 5-year-old code.
so in fact, that's pretty ancient in computer durations, right? So we've got our to-do list resource ID. So this is the other thing is a lot of this uses V1 stuff, and V1 Azure AD V1 was very different in terms of resources and scopes and how you use them. So today we've got scopes, and the scopes are all things like user.read or myapp.mydomain.com / read tasks or something like that. In V1, instead of it being a per scope, we did it per resource, and the resource was sort of the whole API or the whole app. And so because of that, we treat them a little bit differently, which we'll take a look at. So we're going to expose an API. We're going to add a scope, even though we're not really going to actually use the scope, but we're going to give it a name that isn't this because this name is kind of a pain to deal with. So we're going to set this. I'm just going to give it an arbitrary name that has a domain that's mapped to, and we'll call this NetFX Ancient, and we'll call it the to-do list service, and hope that it lets me save that one. It does. Okay. The scope, to be honest, the scope doesn't really matter for what we're going to be doing today because it's all going to be resource-based, but we'll create a scope anyway, and we'll just call it like access. Access the API is what an admin will consent to, and I am the admin, so I will be consenting to it momentarily. Access the API. Access the API. Okay. The most important thing that we have here now is we have our to-do list resource ID. And remember, our resource ID does not include the scope, so it's just going to be what we typed in for our resource ID. So it's also called the app ID URI. You can also get that out of the manifest. So you'll see this identifier URIs. This is your resource ID. In addition, of course, to the ID itself, like the app's ID itself. Okay, so the to-do list is going to be running at localhost 44321, although We're not going to be redirecting to the to-do list, so we don't need to worry about that just yet. And it looks like this is still calling graph, Azure AD graph, which is superb. Okay, so let's see. I think so we've got our client ID, we've got our key, we've got our tenant, we've got our redirect URIs. The last thing we need to do is give permission to our web app to call our API in Azure AD. Obviously, we haven't done anything with the API just yet. So back in our web app, we've got our API permissions. We're going to add a permission. And then under My APIs, we should see our NetFX ancient API. And there it is.
Yes.
We're going to do that. We're going to let it access the API and add the permissions. And now because I'm an admin, I'm going to go ahead and consent to them just so that we don't have to deal with that later. So now those have been consented. And so now we shouldn't have any permission issues for getting our getting an access token when we sign into the app. Okay, so let's go back and look. We don't have any errors anymore. If we look at our startup.auth, this is why you can call it app key, because largely it doesn't matter because it's just config. So this looks kind of familiar to what we have today. It's just sort of like the older versions of it, right? And so this is using ON instead of using like ASP.NET, the ASP.NET authentication bits that we're using in .NET Core. So we're going to set our default sign-in to cookie, which is what we want because we don't want the user to go back to the identity service each time. So we're going to use cookie, which we do already. And we're going to add OpenID Connect authentication. So we've got our client ID, our authority, our redirect URIs. Those came out of our config. And then we have two notifications that need to happen. One is when we get an authorization code. And if you remember when we discussed around authorization code is one of the flows or grants that happens with OpenID and OAuth 2. And what it really means is instead of sending tokens back and forth in the browser, we're going to send a one-time code back after the user signs in. And then the web server is going to take that one-time code and send it to Azure AD server side.
Exchange for a token.
To pop it up. Yep. And so when that happens, this is probably going to be the place where we're going to change the most code for moving over to MSAL. And then authentication failed. Of course, we've already got that. All this does is just redirect you to an error. So let's go look at this here. Excuse me. So when we receive the authorization code, this is Adal, authentication context. So when we create this new authentication context, this is an Adal object.
Yep.
And so because this is an Adal object, and it's just using like an
naive session CAS.
Yeah.
Check that
this is this is what's going to actually handle that code, that authorization code swap. And that's what happens here at acquire token by authorization code async. And so when this happens, this is essentially filling the cache so that later on in our application, it'll be available in the cache and we can go and deal with it. So
is this one grabbing both the ID token and the access token?
Depends on how on what these things do under the hood by default.
Okay.
So we haven't set if it's going to be hybrid or if it's going to be authorization code flow only.
Wait a minute. Did we not agree not to use the word hybrid in this stream ever?
Well, it'll be in the docs, and so I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to say something if somebody sees that and thinks, "Well, what is hybrid?" Nobody ever talked about hybrid. So
let's not get people upset. Fine.
So we have a to-do here saying this is Adal. So that's cool. So that way we know we're going to come back to this. So let's go look at our Solution Explorer. And this is all in, I think, app start. Yeah, startup.auth. Let's go look at our controllers. So we have our account controller.
Man, controllers. Remember when we had to actually hand roll them?
Yep. So again, we've got a bunch of code in here, but most of this is the interaction between most of this is the interaction between ADAL and ASP.NET. If you remember from our last discussions on this, ASP.NET handles the bulk of the authentication bits of actually sending the user over and knowing if they're authenticated, because ASP.NET is going to be the thing that sends a user to go and sign in. When the user comes back, it's going to sign the user in and write a cookie. And that cookie is what's going to authenticate them for subsequent requests until that cookie expires. Because you can imagine if you were in a web app that was constantly redirecting you to like Google or Facebook or something to sign in, it'd be a pretty miserable web app.
Oh, yeah.
So we use the cookie as sort of the cookie is what we use sort of after you've signed in for some period of time.
Yep.
And if you're only doing sign in, that's enough. You actually don't need Adal or MSAL if you're only doing sign in. But since we're also going to be calling an API, we need MSAL and Adal to go and get our tokens for us.
Yep.
So in our account controller, and this ships with a lot of the newer libraries, so you don't actually have to write your own account controller. But since
back in the good old days, you could actually. Well, how many pages were there or views? I think like 22 different views, like MFA, and you can customize all of them, and you can have the look and feel that you want. So yes, it's a lot of manual effort, which we hide away for you in the modern frameworks and embed them in the library.
So in our account controller and our account sign-in, we've got our challenge, right? So
Yes.
this is when you get redirected to /account/sign-in. That's going to do the challenge. That's going to be, and this is an ASP.NET thing again, or ON thing. So ASP.NET's going to look at this challenge call and say, okay, cool, they're trying to send me down this OpenID Connect path. Let's send the user down this path, right? So we're saying this is the specific type that I want this user to be authenticated via. When we've got a sign out, what a sign out really means is clear the cookie, right? So get rid of the user's cookie, which is what this sign out does here. So that essentially just invalidates or deletes the cookie on the response. But the first thing we do is we have to clear the ADAL cache or the MSAL cache. I mean, it's kind of all the same, right? You've got to clear those caches of any sort of tokens or anything that was kept. We're going to clear that. We've got to clear all that out. So we're going to clear the cache, then we're going to delete the user's cookie that they've been using to authenticate subsequently. End session only deletes the cookie and doesn't actually send the user over to Azure AD to go and sign out. So the big difference between these two is this one's going to take the user back to Azure AD and actually sign them out at Azure AD, or at least request that they do. User still has a choice to say yes or no, but it's going to ask them to sign out. Whereas in session is just going to wipe the cache, essentially the same as signing out of an individual app, as opposed to signing out of Azure AD in total, right? So that's our account stuff. So we have a couple changes here to do. Adal, we got another one here. These are all pretty much the same thing to do. Adal. Okay, and then in our controllers, our home controller is pretty clean. The to-do list controller is going to be where we're going to be calling stuff. We're going to come back to that one. We'll come back around to that one last. User profile container. This looks like it has a few things for editing the graph user. And so this has got some Adal in it too, where we're essentially trying to go and get connect to graph and make changes. It looks like based on and update the user's profile in graph directly, which is a pretty bold. It's a pretty bold statement. Hey, CL Dubois, thanks for coming over with all your friends. Yeah, what were you
joining us
working on this morning? Yeah,
Twilio stuff, I think.
I watched a little bit this morning. It looked pretty cool.
He's got to run to the doctor. I hope everything is okay with you, my friends.
Yeah,
stay safe, stay healthy.
And well, welcome. We're migrating old .NET framework apps from Adal to MSAL. It was a hot mess.
He was trying to figure out combining byte arrays, and it was a hot mess. Yes, if you try to do it by yourself, then it's an ugly business. I hope you were using some abstraction on the framework to help you do that. Did you? A delightful mess, says Finite Singularity. I can imagine. It was completely ugly. Copying bytes around. Man, did you do it in C++ or C?
Because doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Why were you messing with bytes? Oh, you know what? I think he was doing like voice segment or something, and he was trying to copy stuff around. Maybe that's why. You can write ugly code and the cops can't stop you. Ciel Dubois. That's true.
That's true. So,
Buffer
well,
block copy.
welcome everybody. We're dusting off some skeletons today and digging into .NET Framework
Full framework.
MVC. Like this is like MVC 5 .NET
Yes.
.NET Framework. Migrating from Adal to MSAL because for authentication libraries because Adal has been deprecated and will be gone next summer. So we've got only about 13 months to get it sorted. So we're taking some old sample apps that we've had that we had published, and we're going to go change them to use MSAL instead of Adal. So at least a good place to start. And then later this week, we're going to take these apps and I think turn them into .NET Core apps. But different. That's a different story for a different day. Okay.
Yep.
So we're in our user profile controller. This is something I've not seen a ton of recently, which is we're actually going to edit the user's profile, it seems. So let's see. This is getting the user's profile from Graph.
Okay.
Well, this gets the user's profile from Graph.
Okay.
So this is getting the user's. Oh no, this is just showing the user profile. Okay, I was going to say that's a little. It's a pretty bold choice. So there's a bunch of work going on in here with Adal that we're going to have to swap out. So that's our other one, and then our last one should be the to-do list. So our to-do list controller, of course, we've got a bunch of extra things here that we need to deal with. So we've got some Adal up here where we're going to go try to get our to-do lists.
So bold is like, hey, I wish somebody wrote an app that can do the migration for you. And I have to say 2 words to you, my friend. The 425 show.
Whoa,
this is who's doing your migration. I mean, there's no app to do the migration for you because it's so customized. Like, look at this app here. It has so much customized code that there's no way to do a straight up migration from one library to another. Same with .NET Core. You can't do the migration. You have to rewrite a bunch of stuff every single time. So
yeah, you probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't do. You probably wouldn't. This is probably more verbose, I believe, because it is. Because it's a sample, and also because it's just so old. And because so this has. Let's see. So we're going to post to index to create a new item. So we got to get tokens in. Of course, we have a list of items when they come back, and that's it. So we've only got 2 methods in here, essentially list and post. So let's see if this runs with our config. I'm actually not.
Bad start. What happened there? What did it say?
It's just IIS Express SSL. That's all.
Oh yeah.
So this is
certificates.
So it's interesting so this is 44321, but I wonder if that's launched the API first. I believe it has, which of course we haven't done anything. So let's go start our web app first. So let's start the web app. We'll do a debug and a start.
It's not my fault that JP just presses buttons and clicks OK before I even see the messages. Like click, 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 and then it goes. I don't have enough time to see it.
Probably shouldn't have done that. But anyway, okay. So now we're on the web app. So it's 44322. So we know we're in the right place.
Let's sign in.
So here's our web app. We have no menu, so that's useful. Oh no, here it is.
Oh, what?
I think some of the CSS may be so old that perhaps it's no longer on CDN. Maybe it's not on CDN anymore.
Could be.
Man. So but we have our menu. It's just not super pretty. But anyway, so we've got our
sandwich menu on a web app. We have to look modern.
And if we look at where this link is going to take us, if you look down in the corner, you'll see it's taking us to account/sign-in, and that's where our challenge is going to happen. So let's go here, and my fingers are sort of crossed that maybe. Okay, so that didn't. Okay, okay. So this is saying. So this is the error that came back from Azure AD. So the way that that on authentication failed, that redirects us to home error with the message in it. So it says it's an unsupported response type, which is that the response type of ID token is not enabled for this application. What this means is the response type ID token means it's an implicitly granted ID token and that it is not enabled for the app.
So Roberto Bulls says The hope that JP had instantly crashed. Yes, identity is crashing hope and killing dreams.
It's sort of like if you think to yourself, my soul is feeling too good today. What can I do to go and crush it? You go write some identity
Identity
code.
code, especially with Adal and MSAL on the full framework.
So there are two ways we can fix. Fix is probably not the right word here. We can
Address.
fix we can fix the bug by essentially lowering security posture and saying, okay, fine, I'll turn it on, right?
Who cares
So
about
that's what
security
this-
anyway, right? Let's just add
That's
the
what
ID
this
token.
checkbox is. That's this checkbox, the ID token. So what that means is that by default, this is using the quote hybrid flow, which is a combination of an implicitly granted ID token along with a authorization code exchange granted access token.
Yep.
So we can say ID token, that's fine. You'll notice it says used for implicit and hybrid. You can use this if you'd like, and your app may already be using it. If you had never made any changes to your sort of default config, then you are most likely using it. So we could do that, which I'm not a huge fan of, but we'll do it just because we're going to get rid of it anyway. Oh no, a clip's been made. Fingers crossed and crushed.
Hybrid is just a wolf in sheep's clothing. You're absolutely right. We don't want to use hybrid. We want to fix the problem. Although for now, we may want to just bypass this because we're rewriting stuff with MSAL, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna gut this or not gut, but we're gonna make some changes anyway. So I'm gonna turn it on for now, just so we can make sure that our sign-in and everything's wired up correctly, and we'll just don't let us end the show without turning it off. Okay, so the app's actually still running, and we should just be able to go back to localhost 44322.
Mm-hmm.
Got our application name here and behind
the
our
hamburger menu.
Super pretty styled menu here. So we go to sign in. Okay, cool.
Ooh, look at that.
So goodness gracious. Token caching. Boy, our naive session cache doesn't work. So let's see. Object reference is not. So there is. So there's no current HTTP context, and there's no session.
Whoa.
So of course, because the current context is null.
Yes, there's no session.
Okay,
either.
so well, we're not even getting to session. We're not even getting a current context yet. So let's go. This has even got a little green thing. And obsolete. I love that that's the suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is probably because we moved from Adal v3 to Adal v5.
Oh, the big jump.
Yeah. So this one we will have to change. And this will be, let's see here. So this dot, I think it's deserialize Adal v3. Although we really shouldn't have to deal with that because we don't have an existing cache because we didn't run it with Adal v3. But because the way this method is written, we will likely potentially have to keep it. But let's see. So this, in our deserialize is deprecated. So what deserialize does this want us to use? So it's Adal v3. Oh, well, we are in Adal. So let's, and then this is Adal and unified, which I don't think we're going to need to worry about unified. So let's do a deserialize Adal v3. That's got the Adal state in it. And the Adal state is coming out of what looks like session.
So no bytes there whatsoever.
Oh, there are bytes. We got it.
You need to.
Yeah, we got to cast them. So that's a deserialized Adal v3. That likely
you're
means
you're missing a closing colon.
Okay. So we're also going to do it. We're going to update this to be a serialized Adal v3. So at least that way they're the same. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Let's run this again. See what we get.
Let's run this bad boy and see what happens.
I keep opening the wrong one. All right. Let me change my startup project.
You can do both, right? You know that.
Yeah, but I don't need both right now because the other one's just going to blow up. Okay, here we go.
Oh, just check the sign in. I see.
Yeah, let's check the sign in. Make sure that work, because we don't want to be chasing down one thing when something else is
Yes.
entirely not working.
And I think today we're only doing the web app, right? We want to get the web app to where it needs to be before it even goes and acquires tokens from the API. Focus on the
Yeah,
front end.
we'll see how far we can get. Okay, so this is still null. So we'll see how far we can get. We'll see how far we can get in the API, but that's going to be predicated on us actually getting the web app to work today too.
Is this being called at the point that the HTTP context is not formed? Why is it being passing a null HTTP somewhere in the pipeline? In
So
the
it's
middleware,
happening at
it's flowing.
so it's happening here on authorization code received.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, it's passing an auth context, which I think may see. It's probably failing before that, and it's initializing the auth context with null. Line 91. I think that's where things are falling apart. You might want to put a
well,
breakpoint.
I wonder. I wonder if the context isn't being sent in correctly.
Yes.
So we have this context. Let's see. So this has got a client credential authentication context, which is using a new naive session cache.
Which is
It's
where it
not
blows.
sending. Yeah, it's not sending that in anywhere though. So and that's just got the user's object ID. So is it because well?
I think it is
I wonder
line 91, but we need to
I
do
wonder if we're
something.
gonna have to. I wonder if we're gonna have to send that in ourselves. If we're gonna have to send in the HTTP context ourselves.
Or to initialize the naive session cache.
Yeah. Because so the naive session cache gets created, and the naive session cache is referencing the HTTP context, and of course the
But it's
HTTP
not.
context
Yeah.
is not available yet. So how did this ever work? Anyway,
Did V3 have a different pipeline for?
well, it isn't V3 though.
Oh,
It's
sorry. Oh,
because
yeah, it is
ASP.NET's the
V3.
thing that's calling this, right?
Uh huh.
So
I think line 91 is where the problem is, but we need to figure out why. Like authority should be, it's just a static value, so we know that this is populated. Hey, Sahil, how you doing, buddy? Sahil has entered the room.
So we create our new session cache, which are with our user ID, which with a confidential client like a web app, you need a different cache per user. So this is trying to get the current cat or the current HTTP context, which isn't there. So I think what we'll do because these
Uh-huh.
so this is calling a load in the constructor.
Yep.
So I wonder then, I don't know if I necessarily want to class. Well, I don't want to set the class or don't want to send in the context when that gets created, although it's not going to be persistent. So let's do this. Let's create us a private context here, and let's see if we can find one to find one to send in. So context. At least that way we'll have a little bit more control over it. I'll see those are capitalized too, which is even weirder instead of the underscore. Although is the underscore old? Am I dating myself by doing that?
I'm not going to comment on that. I want to stay out of it.
So what we'll do here is we'll do a context. A context.current or context session. Let's find any other HTTP context in here, and we'll just replace these. At least this way we can fiddle around with how we're going to find that context to get it in here. So we'll do a context here. I guess I could do a find and replace. I didn't think there'd be that many. Okay, there haven't been that many. All right. So that all looks good. So we've updated that. Now let's go find us a context that we can send in. I believe there's an OWIN. Is there not an OWIN context that we can use? that's going to be part of this? I don't remember. Let's see what's in this context object that we get. So that's all of the
ASP.NET context, right?
yeah. Well, so this is the token, the authorization code received notification. And in this notification, we do have an OWIN context, but I don't think that's just going to be the request and the response.
Found something on the web. There's a guard around HTTP context. If it's null, when it tries to load, it skips over. I wonder if there's different times that this is called, and then it fails the first time, and then the HTTP context gets populated, and then this is where it happens. So
What do you mean?
So in the naive session cache, one of the examples I found is that in the load, they do a lock on the file lock, and then they... Are you in there? You're not in there. Can you go to the naive thingy? Naive session cache. In the load, they do right after the session lock, enter read lock on line 28. They do a check on the HTTP context to check if it's null, and then if it's null, they don't execute line 29. I wonder if it's timing rather than the code being wrong, if you know what I mean.
Well, if it is timing, then I think that makes the code extremely wrong. Like, right? I mean,
sure.
Now, granted, at the same time, you know, we're not going to have a cache. But if we don't have a cache, then we're going to kind of be in trouble because because we have to persist this thing through requests, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, we can always check this for null. But honestly, we're going to have to check to see if the HTTP context is null. And if the HTTP context is null, I mean, this is trying to do a load. But then when we redeem it, are we going to have a context then? I guess we can go and look. So if it's not, I guess if it is null, then we'll just return, get out of here.
Do you not need... Oh, you need to exit the log, yeah.
So, well, let's just do this instead.
Yeah.
Let's move this up here. But if our current context is... Now, so this is only in the load. So the curious thing will be what happens when we go to persist this cache, because we're going to be in this... It's going to happen in the same method because it's going to happen when we redeem that code, right? So... I don't know. I don't know. I have very little confidence in this right now, but I guess we're going to gut it anyway. So maybe it doesn't matter because we're going to drop it in favor of MSAL. But whatever. Oh, the build broke. Must have really made a change. Context is a variable, but used like a type. Oh, I still had some. I just had some left over.
Some leftover code.
It feels like it's like being an archaeologist.
Yeah.
Code archaeology. Yeah.
Well, you know what? In 100 years, people will be looking back and say, what were these folks writing back then? Why did not computers write their code? Why did they have primitive humans trying to write code?
All right, let's try to sign in.
Sign in.
Yeah, so it's going to try to write to the cache. And
it's null, right?
Context is null.
God.
So let's figure out... Let's make sure we didn't miss any settings or anything. Let's go look at our... Let me stop this. Let's go look at our configuration and see. So we've got... So all those look okay. We've got values for all the ones that were requested.
Is there a section for the naive cache? Probably not.
So it does have session state with a however long 525,000 seconds is timeout. So that all looks okay.
Yep.
Okay. So then in our, let's look at the rest of our startup here, or the rest of our. So that's just
what's in the global ASX? Does the global ASX do anything with? No, it just calls into these. Yeah. Okay.
Global ASX. Oh my god.
Man, yeah.
It's taking me way back.
Sievers.
We've got area. Oh, yeah, so that's just filters, roots, and bundles.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no config there.
So it's all happening inside the startup auth.
And then this has just got configure auth. So
Mm-hmm.
why would our HTTP context not be available in that method? Or sorry, in that, like, why would
In the
it?
pipeline. Yeah.
Why would it not be there? Like, where are we that it is no longer, that it is not there yet? I wonder.
It's the middleware. So HTTP context is part of the middleware. I'm surprised that it's not being passed in.
Well, I know, like in later ones, you had to pass in the HTTP context assessor, but I thought that was a .NET Core
Mm,
specific, specific thing, right?
yes.
Like that's a .NET Core thing. I don't think that's in old framework. I mean, maybe it is. I just don't know. But so, why would our HTTP context be null in our OpenID Connect authorization message received, authorization code received method? I'm going to go look on Google briefly.
Google is your help. And while JP is doing that, just to remind everyone that if you have questions around identity and you need help or you want to join the community, make sure to join our Discord. Open to everyone. Nothing there. The problem is that these things are fairly old now, so they might not even come up on the search results.
Yeah, I don't really see a whole lot. I do see like some. There's definitely some other stuff that's out there, but Stack Overflow stuff. So let's see. I wonder. Because in some ways, we're probably still going to have to deal with this when we switch to MSAL, because MSAL is going to have MSAL is going to need a cache too. You know what I mean?
But it has its own CAS, right? It has a different implementation. It doesn't use the naive CAS, right?
It does have a different. Well, but we're going to have to provide for it an implementation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, although no, I guess there is the in-memory one that ships with it that we shouldn't have to deal with. So we shouldn't have to deal with it on our own, right?
Oh yeah, because ASP.NET actually has its own built-in. You don't have to do anything. It's the mobile and desktop clients that need to implement authentication. Malware Hacker 99 is in the house. That's a fantastic handle, by the way. We're all good.
It is.
We're doing ASP.NET with the full framework today, and we're trying to migrate from the old Edel authentication library to MSAL, which is the one that will be supported going forward as of June 2022.
So,
Billbot Twitchcraft. Hey, welcome.
I wonder if the
Now, I know you want to get this running, but would it not make more sense to just, I'm just saying, to just start migrating to MSAL and move away from this one? Because we could be stuck here for hours. And the whole point is to migrate off Adal.
yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. My only concern is that if somebody's in this position, granted, I guess if they're in this position, their app's probably already working. So maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, we're
I mean,
having.
that's fine. If we want to go ahead and gut it, we can. Although, all right, then yeah, let's go ahead and gut it. Whatever. Okay.
Let's got it.
So the first few things we're gonna have to do, we got to change our. Before we go down this route, let's take a quick break. But
Sounds good.
I got to get a new drink, but we're going to go take a quick break, and I suppose we will be back in just a couple moments.
How are you gonna deal with the break? We don't have a music interlude.
I guess I'm just going to leave this up for a minute while we.
Okay,
while we
I'll be
walk
here
away.
entertaining the crowd while you're taking your break. How about that? Okay, everyone, what are we building today? Theme tune. Yeah, I mean we don't have. See, the problem is that we moved to Restream and I know that it's not as cool as OBS, but at the same time, it provides a lot of flexibility. And as you can see, we can move stuff around. We can make ourselves big, like my big face over here. We can have things side by side. And you don't get this flexibility with OBS. We could, but it's a lot of work. Sorry, yeah, no music. So what we're doing right now, I know, Sahil, I know you used to jam on this music. So what we'll do is we will rework on our assets so we can have a long kind of a video that we upload and play when we go on a break or before we start. So I know you want to dance. We'll make sure we address that. In fact, we're meeting with our creative team today to discuss these changes because we have some really exciting stuff. You want me to hum? You don't want me to sing? Seriously, you don't want me to sing? I mean, I could. Did you know that we have a TikTok and an Instagram that is going to go nuts over the next few weeks? We got some exciting stuff happening. So if you want to join us, TikTok, and yes, we actually have them. I'm not promising any dancing over there, but we'll try to put some technical content. And I'm also on Instagram as well. So we have an official channel, and we have an official Instagram. But I also have my own personal account. So if you want to follow me there, and for Malware Hacker 99, that's asking what are we building. It is an ASP.NET MVC app using the full .NET framework, and we're trying to upgrade the authentication on this thing. While JP is taking his break, I'm here to entertain the troops by not humming and not dancing. What are you guys building today? I know it's Tuesday for some of you, so it might be the end of the day, but what are you working on? Anything fun? Anything painful? What would you like to work on? How about that? What would be your ideal thing? Like if somebody were to come and give you a project to work right now, what would that be? You can choose any stack you want, so surprise me. User stories. Oh God, I know. Oh man, is this one of these kind of meetings where everybody sits around and then they give numbers? I used to do that. How long do you think this is gonna take? I don't know, 3 hours. And somebody would say 5 days. Like you go for 3 hours to 5 days. That's the fun bit. So sorry, Bolt. I know it's a painful thing. Hey, JP's back.
All right. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff to get rid of. Primarily, our identity model client's Active Directory. That's our Adal, and that's probably the worst one that we need to dump.
Let's dump it.
Let's go ahead and get rid of that. I'm just going to delete it and see what. I'm just going to remove it and see what blows up. Let's go add a new one. And we're going to add a new one to. Oh Lord have mercy, this is so old. I've completely forgotten how to do any of this stuff. So we're going to manage our NuGet packages, and let's look.
You should be managing at the solution level, not at the project level, but I will ignore it.
Well, luckily, because this, nobody told the dinosaurs what they should have done. So hopefully I'll never be in here again.
So Bolt is working on user stories, and Sahil is working on single sign-out. So these are exciting projects. Let us know what you guys are working on.
So we're going to install Microsoft Identity Client, which is MSAL. So that's our newest one.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and get this installed. Okay.
Oh, Cesar Fritz raiding us.
Hey.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Raid attack. You guys are awesome.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. We
are
are
the most interesting bits.
Yeah, we're updating super old .NET framework projects. So
I keep telling you not to call it super old because people are still running it. Just because we always work on the fun, shiny .NET Core stuff doesn't mean that it's not relevant.
I'm not saying that it's not relevant. I'm saying that it is old.
Friendship ended with Adal. You're absolutely right, live coding. That's true. Friendship ended with Edel.
That's right.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. You've got 13 months. You've got 13 months to move off of Adal and break that codependent relationship. So the sooner you get away from Adal, the sooner things will be better.
And by the way, while you're doing that, if you get stuck and if you need help and support, we do have a support team. We have a dedicated support team that will help you migrate. So what we do here is probably going to touch one of the very many popular scenarios. But if you see at the very top, we have Get Help. And there you can go and reach out directly to our support team. So
Yeah.
just be aware. Yeah, we know people will need support on this one.
I mean, the tutorial that went along with this code sample said make sure you have Visual Studio 2013.
At least it
So
was in
okay,
2003, right?
I guess
With
that's true.
.NET
Yeah, that was
1.
the first one. That was the first one I started with. So
Please.
okay, so we're back in our startup.auth. We've switched out Adal for MSAL library sides. Now we've got to update our authorization code received. So the first thing we got to do here is we need to create a confidential client app, right? So this is what represents our MSAL app or our MSAL object. So let's create a new one, and this is going to be a confidential client application. I never remember how to create these, so we've got a builder.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Condition new. You need to do new, right? Oh, you're using the builder.
well, I don't
Okay.
really want to use the builder if I don't have to.
Okay.
So we've got our, let's see, do we get ours here? No, we don't. So we need to create our confidential client. We need to create a new one of these.
I like that you don't look at the docs and you insist on building it yourself.
Well, so we give it, so we give it a client ID here.
Yep.
So we've got our client ID, okay, and then we're going to do a with client secret because that's what we need for our round trip. So that's
Yes.
called an app key in this app, and
Correct.
then we need a with authority.
Yep.
And in here, we should have our authority. Yep, so we do have that. And let's see, we've got our client ID, we've got our client secret, and we need a with redirect URI. And I
Yep.
believe we've got that in here too somewhere.
It's in the settings.
Let's make these, let's collapse these so we can see what they are. So this is a
There you
redirect URI. Oh, it's called redirect URI. Okay, redirect URI.
Convenient.
And then we will do a dot build on this. Now we should have our MSAL client, but it looks like I didn't create it correctly. Doesn't have a constructor with one argument, so
What does it need?
I don't know. It should only need it used formerly,
Oh,
or maybe we
wait,
do a
maybe
with
it does
client
need
ID.
one with client ID. Yeah.
Yeah. Oops. So we'll do a with client ID, and we've got our client ID there.
Exactly.
Okay. Still doesn't like it.
Oh,
Doesn't
what
have
is
a
missing?
constructor with.
Oh, maybe you can do a constructor. Is it?
Maybe it's. I think it might be a dot create. Dot create. Yeah, create. And create takes a client ID. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We don't need to set our client ID. So we've got our MSAL object. So we're still going to need our user object ID. So we've got that. That's just getting it out of the object identifier claim. So now what we need is our MSAL object. We're going to do a acquire token by authorization code. And this is going to require us to go set up a cache, which we have not yet done. So we've got our, so we need some scopes. We're going to have to give it a new array of scopes. So let's get our array. And then the other thing we're going to need is the authorization code itself, which we get out of the context. So that's just going to be our code here. And our scope, what we're going to use, and this is a sort of a shortcut to the V1 behavior, is our scope is going to use the it's going to use the resource with dot default at the end of it. So let's just go change our config setting in our web config. So instead of it being, so it's still going to be to-do list resource ID, but we're going to take our resource ID.
Yep.
We're going to take our resource ID and we're going to add the default scope to the end of it. So we've got, let's see, what setting name is that? Looks like we don't have it in here.
It doesn't pull it in. Yeah.
So let's just, keeping with the pattern at least, we'll keep this in here, and it is called, we'll call this our to-do list resource, or we'll call it the to-do list API resource, since that's what we're going to be calling. And that is configuration manager, app settings, and I don't know what this, I guess identity, I don't know what the IDA always stood for. Let's go back to our web config, and it is Oh no, it's to-do list resource ID. So let's go over back here. And this is our setting. So what we're going to do is take our to-do list API resource configuration.
Yep.
We're going to build a new, we're going to do a new string here. Do we get string interpolation here? I never remember.
Yes, because the framework is independent of the language features. So you could still be using .NET 9 with, so .NET 9 syntax, for example, with full .NET framework.
Cool. Okay. So let's get rid of this here. So we've got our user object ID. We've got that, which we're going to need for our, we're going to need that for our cache. And then we're doing an acquire token by authorization code, and then we're going to do an execute async on that. So we'll have to await that. And you'll notice we added this /.default, and that pretty much says, give us everything that's already been configured. Because we already configured it in the app, we don't have to call them out specifically here. Don't think we need any of this. And then don't believe we need any of, although this is calling the graph, which is interesting. This isn't redeeming one for the to-do for to-do. This is redeeming one for graph.
It's not. Interesting. It goes directly to graph. Oh, because in the app it's probably doing two things. Like in the default controller, it tries to get the user profile information, and then in the is there an account controller? Oh, sorry, API controller that will go and get the data from the resource. Okay.
So we'll put the graph resource back in here so it can call graph. And then we will delete the old Adal way to do it, which we don't need anymore. We can get rid of those two. And we can get rid of this client credential because we don't need that anymore. We've got our code. We've got our confidential client app builder. And then we have our user, which we need our user object ID for creating our cache. So I don't believe we have, let's see, we're going to have to do, let's see, is it with, we don't have any cache on here. So we'll have to do an MSAL user token cache. And then here we'll do a set after access and a set before access. So set after access.
Sun Lucifer is asking, does the graph resource ID not need the .default?
It does need a .default. Thank you.
Well done, Sun Lucifer. Good catch.
Yep, /.default. Okay. So the way that, so there are two ways you can do MSAL caches, which are different from Adal caches. So you can rewrite the whole cache if you want. You can implement iToken cache, but that takes a lot of work, and there's really not necessarily a ton of benefit to it. So instead, there are these two methods: set after access and before, or set before access. And those two methods are essentially the very last step. It's the very last step before for either actually writing the bytes or actually reading the bytes. And then MSAL itself is the thing that handles doing the serialization of the data. All you're doing is getting a set of bytes and either writing them or reading them and giving them back. So what we'll do, let's update this naive session cache that we have, which doesn't work.
You can remove it anyway, right? Because there's an in-memory one for MSAL.
Well, there's an in-memory one, but we have to do it ourselves.
Okay.
Because we don't have any. How would we? Where in MSAL would we have that? Because there's no in-memory cache that MSAL directly provides.
Let's do it.
So we're gonna have to do our set after access. We're gonna have to set after access. This is where we're going to give it a method to our cache, and then we're going to have to do, Then we're going to have to do an MSAL user token cache, and we're going to do a set before access. And these two methods are going to be methods that we have to go and implement to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with these? So In our, if we want to try, we can try recreating our naive session cache if we're feeling bold. So let's take our object ID. We're going to move this up here. And we're going to create a new, we'll call this token cache. It's going to be a new naive session cache, and it's going to have the user's object ID in it. So user object ID. And then we're going to have two methods in here that hang off of the token cache. One's going to be the, let's see, after access means that a token change was made. And we need to go and write that. Mm-hmm. And then before means we're just about to read the cache, so we need to go read what's in the cache. So that's going to be a load. And now we've got to go update those signatures to take what we expect, which is a token cache callback. So let's go here to our load. And this is going to expect token cache event args. We need our using up here, using Microsoft Identity Client. And we can get rid of our Adal reference up here. And then this, I actually don't believe we're going to need this.
To inherit from that, okay.
Well, so we can re-implement one. Mm-hmm. But so you can re-implement it with you can re-implement using the iToken cache interface. You can't derive from it. So instead, it just becomes a thing. So,
okay. So there's no overrides then. You just implement the methods, right?
Yeah. So we need. Let's see. I need to go get those specific types. So we've got our before token cache notification args. So that's what these are going to expect. Token cache notification args, and we'll call them args. So when we load the cache, we are essentially going to do the same thing here, which is we're going to look it up by the user's object ID.
Yep.
So
is it there?
Let's see. So what is the cache ID? Where is that? Oh, the cache ID is the user's object ID _ token cache. Okay. Mm-hmm. So so we've got so we need to go back and pull this, which we should actually already have by virtue of the fact that when we create this, we have the user's ID. Mm-hmm. So we'll just call this, I'll call this like cache bytes or whatever. And then this, we've got our args. I don't know if we need any of that. What is this going to return? That's our second question. So,
do you not have a sample implementation of an MSAL cache that we can look at?
I do have some. I do have some other ones. Here we go. So, but the one I have is, I don't know if it's going to be. Well, it might be okay. It does a bunch of, it's got a factory and all this because there's extra data that it needed that wasn't available, and it ends up being far more complex than it needs to be.
Sure.
So when we're loading it, we're going to be deserializing the bytes. So we're going to deserialize. We're going to deserialize MSAL v3 because that's what we're going to be using. So we're going to deserialize MSAL v3 from our cache bytes. Mm-hmm. And that should be it.
And then you need to do the persist, right?
Yep. And then we have to do one on persist. Oops. And then we're going to have to do one on persist. Oh, look, we've already got these two. They were already done. I just didn't know. I didn't think to use them. So the persist is going to be similar. which is so we'll just use these straight up instead of doing these other wrappers. So
Do you feel that we still need the check for nullability on 27? Probably defensive programming, I guess.
Well, probably because it's probably also going to blow up. Not going to blow up the way it worked. It's going to continue to blow up the way it did before. So if if the state has not changed, we're essentially done, right? Because there's nothing new to persist. So this happens after after the cache has been accessed.
Yep.
So if the no new tokens have been added, so if there's no state change, then we're just going to exit. Otherwise, we are going to do token cache, and we're going to So we're going to get the bytes, which is what serialize MSAL v3 does. So we'll just call these cache bytes or whatever. So we've got our bytes. I don't know what this is all about. We need to do this early to avoid losing changes by a concurrent thread. Oh, good Lord. Okay. So then we've got our cache ID, which is still for the user, and we're going to set this to our cache bytes.
Yep.
And exit. Okay. So we'll get rid of these, get rid of these extra things. So we're going to update our cache here, and then we're just going to get rid of this other stuff.
Oh, yeah, because we're not overriding the existing one, right? There you go.
Yep. So there's no override here. Now, we may still want to clear so we can go and clear out the bytes of the session, but that's a kind of a different problem. So, and then we can get rid of these two notifications because we're not going to use those notifications anymore.
How come we're not using them?
I mean, we could. They're just wrappers for these other two methods that we just wrote.
Right. So you have those, is line 19, and okay. So this goes.
Yep. So we don't need those anymore either, because we're going to create the new session cache, and then we're setting it on our own. So the alternative would be we could also pass in the MSAL object itself, and we could set them. We could set them here in the constructor to configure it, but whatever.
That will be a weird dependency bringing the whole MSAL object down here, though.
So essentially, we're going to create this, and all we're really setting is our token cache ID. So let's go back to our startup.
Yeah.
So now our persist and our load are good. So provided the persist and load will actually work, which is, of course, anybody's guess, provided that these actually work, when we log in, MSAL should get our token by authorization code, and it should go stuff it into the cache.
Let's find out.
And the cache will actually be written. So because we got rid of that other thing, there's going to be a ton of other changes we have to make.
Okay.
So let's go look at these other ones and get these changes made over here too.
It's all about chopping.
We're going to use, not system identity model. We're going to use Microsoft.identity.client. So this is in our account controller. Now this shouldn't be dramatically different except in the sign out. And sign out really in this this is going to be that clear, right? So we have to. So we're going to have to get our MSAL object, or we're going to have to recreate one. Then we're going to have to go clear our token cache. So we should probably write some kind of I feel like we should write some sort of a helper method to do this, but whatever.
Do the dirty one now, and then we'll clear the code next time because we have 20 minutes left.
So let's see. We essentially need this again. And we're going to need these two as well. Actually, we're going to need all of this.
Oh, you need all of that? Wow.
Yeah, because we have to create our client. We got to configure our caches because, I mean, the client itself is largely stateless. The state is in the cache itself. So we're going to need essentially this big block for to create our MSALs in all the different places where we were creating an Adal before. We've got to essentially do the same thing again here. So, and in this case, all we're going to be doing in here is a clear.
Yeah.
And that actually, we may not even need to open. We do. So never mind. Forget I said that. So this is going to clear the session cache.
Do you not need to
But
do
this,
this after line 61 though?
yeah, we have to do this later. So we'll take this. This is going to happen down here. And this is sort of the ham-fisted approach. That's essentially delete the
Yeah.
file, right?
Yeah.
However, we also in MSAL have a, we have to remove the
remove
account.
accounts. Yeah.
Yep. So we have a remove async, and remove async is going to expect an account, which means we have to go find the account first. MSAL get account async.
Oh, you have to
That's
pass
going
an
to take.
ID there.
So we'll
Fun.
take our user object ID to get that account.
Do you have it?
Yeah, because we've got it in the claim. So we'll take
Wait a
our
minute.
account.
Your line 55 is slightly broken there. Is it? Does it
Yeah,
need to be
no,
HTTP context?
It does.
Oh.
Oops. And it's not authentication ticket. It is
user.identity, right?
It's right down here. Claims principal.current. There we go.
Ooh.
Claims principal.current.
Also, we have a top level object that is not that's exposing the claims principal. Nice. I forgot.
Yeah, it's super old school. Remember?
You're missing the client ID on line 49. Oh, you're missing quite a few things there.
Yeah, we're missing all the config here. So we might want to put this somewhere else and just have like a little static class that builds it for us. But
yep.
So we have to go and get our. We have to go get. Make this. Now we have to go get our account, and then we have to go remove our account. So let's see. MSAL remove async, and then we take it our account. Now, you can do this, or you can be exceedingly ham-fisted and just delete, like literally clear the bytes in the cache. The next time one of these happens, it will blow up because the cache will be empty, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to figure out the best way to build our MSAL clients. Which now that I'm thinking about it, might just be a little faster to to just do it.
Static class to turn an MSAL object. Yeah.
Although.
What?
I guess we'll have to pass in a user object ID for wherever we are. Let me go back to startup.auth. I'm just going to create a new class down here. We'll call this MSAL builder. And we'll do a, let's see, confidential client application. And we'll just call it a get. And then we'll have a user object ID as an optional parameter for our cache. And then, we're also going to need all of our configuration settings. But of course, we can go and get those here.
Yeah, you probably need the authority as well, which you missed out. There's one more line that you need to copy. That's the one. Better call MSAL.
That's pretty good.
That's a good one.
That's great, actually. We're going to have to use that one.
We've been sitting on this for a year. I feel betrayed that we didn't come up with that one. Man.
I genuinely can't believe that we didn't do that.
You know what? Roberto Bulls, you win today. You win the internet, man. How did we not think about that?
I know. It's a huge loss. I can't believe we didn't do this.
I am devastated. Right. My whole day's gone now.
All right. So now we've got our get. Oh, that's right. I can't.
What's missing?
All these are static though. I guess they're all privately static, but whatever. Instance. Oh wait, sorry, I didn't mark this as static. Sorry, that was my fault. Okay. This is going to configure our caches.
Do some dependency injections so you don't have to call it every time. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. I mean, it would be a good idea, but don't do that for now.
Yeah, I don't want to. I was thinking like, I'm so used to doing dependency injection now in ASP.NET. It would certainly be easier to do it that way, but I'm not going to worry. we'll come back around to that one later on because
Yes.
I don't think this isn't using anything for any dependency injection container right now. So
No.
so we could actually replace this entire thing with just
A
go
get.
get.
Yes.
So we'll do msal equals msal builder dot get, and then we need the user's object ID, which
Love it.
just deleted. Let me go back because that comes out of the context, out of the
It does.
token.
Yes.
That comes out of the token notification context. So we do need our user's object ID, but we'll do an msal builder get with the user object ID in it.
Yep. And you can delete the rest.
All of this. All of this. Now, at least we've got our msal object relatively easily gettable.
Look at that beauty over there. Look at that beauty over there.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's got our object ID in it, so that's good. So let's go back to our account controller, and we're going to do essentially the same thing.
Yep.
So msal will be an msal builder get, and it's going to use this user object ID. So we can get rid of all of this. And then here we will do, now because we're not creating our token cache, we're not doing a clear here. So we're going to be removing it, but removing it is essentially the same thing because then it'll get rewritten. So we're going to remove the account. That's going to trigger the after access anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So no big deal there. And then we're going to call sign out. And the sign out is the thing that essentially invalidates the cookie. So we got to do the same thing again down here. This is not calling. So this is doing a sign out.
Wow.
But it is only signing out the cookie. It's not signing out the OpenID Connect. This is essentially the same thing. So I'm just going to grab this and we'll put this down here. Okay. This needs to be an async task as well. Okay. Yeah. So we've got our object ID, we've got our msal object. We're going to get the account, and we're going to remove it, and then we're going to go sign user out. Cool. So the account one is all good. So let's get rid of this one. Now we've got our to-do list and our user profile. So let's go to user profile because there's probably going to be a lot in here too.
Yep.
So we'll get rid of this, and we'll do Microsoft Identity Client. So in the index is when it's going to go, let's see, so this is getting the tenant ID and the user object ID. It's doing an acquire token silent. So let's go do this. So let's get our msal object. So msal builder get and the user object ID. And then what we'll do is authentication result is actually an MSAL client too, or an MSAL property, so that'll be good. So our result here will be MSAL acquire token silent to the graph resource ID, but we should not need a credential any longer. I don't think we'll even need I don't think we need the user identifier anymore either. So this is acquire token silent, which is going to expect, let's see. It's going to expect an account and it's going to expect scopes. So we got to give it some scopes. So again, a new array. We're going to change this graph resource ID. We're going to do we'll do interpolation on this one. And we'll do a /.default. That'll give us all of our graph scopes. And then it looks like we also need an account. So we'll do a get account by identifier, which is the user object ID.
You need to make an async, buddy.
We'll just do that here.
Oh,
I know. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Inline.
It is already async, but so we've got our acquire token async, we've got our list of scopes, and then we've got our get account async. What does it not like about this? Use acquire token silent instead. acquire token silent. There we go. Acquire token silent is going to expect a list of scopes and an account, or a scopes and a login hint. So we don't need that. So we've got our array.
Is what's returned by the get account not an I account? Is that it?
No, it's because we have to do an execute async on it.
Oh.
Yep. We'll do an execute async, so that gets us our authentication result. So this is what will essentially get us our token. So then this is calling the Graph API. All that stays pretty much the same. There's our authentication result access token. If it's a success, then deserialize it. If it is not, it says we're going to drop the current access token and show the user an error. So login hint, for anybody who's interested, login hint is a way to send in the parameter or in the request. There's a parameter called login hint, and if you want to bypass essentially home realm discovery, which is the thing that says type in your email address and then it redirects you. If you want to bypass that, you can include a login hint, and it will pretty much take you directly to your sign-in instead of having to type in your email address first. Okay, so the call failed, drop the current access token to show the user an error, indicating that they might need to sign in again. So this is dropping.
Whoa.
So this deletes tokens for that. It deletes the tokens as if they're bad, and then clears out the, seems kind of a...
User profile controller. That is excessive. I don't think we even need that one, right?
Where do you see that? User profile controller. What are you talking about?
What is
this is the thing that shows this calls the graph and shows the user their profile data.
Okay, so what is this method doing?
So this is the one where essentially if the API call to graph fails,
okay,
then it's clearing out it's deleting the specific token that it used from the cache.
I don't see why you should do that.
So normally what you would do is an acquire token interactive or an acquire token by refresh.
Exactly.
So I don't know why you would delete it from the cache. So, I mean, because MSAL is going to handle that for you anyway.
Exactly.
So we shouldn't have to do any of this.
Nope.
But instead of trying to send the user back to re-authenticate, what this is going to do is essentially just
create an empty profile.
It's going to clear the profile data and then tell the user that something was wrong. But
unexpected error. Now go figure it out yourself, buddy. I'm not telling you anything else.
Okay, so now we need to change the Adal exception to an MSAL UI required exception.
Yes.
Now, MSAL UI required means that the user needs to go and sign in again. And so what this is doing is if refresh is true, the user has clicked the link to be authorized again. Okay, I'm not changing this, whatever. But essentially, it's going to cause the user to go back through a re-authentication.
Request query string reauth. Really? We have a reauth in the URL?
It's a link that somebody wrote to do that. So.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah. So there's going to be a link.
Roberto Balls is asking, how old is this code base? I think this code base is a good 4 or 5 years old, although there have been some updates. Yeah. Oh, no, we picked up a branch, right? So we didn't go from main. We picked up a branch which still had Adal references there. So that could be going back a few years.
So this version, it says the last commits were 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago.
Okay.
So the original code base, it looks like, was 7 years old.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Ready to run.
All right. So we got 5 minutes.
5 minutes to spare.
Well, we're not ready to run because there's another whole controller. There's another whole controller that is broken. So you guys thought this was going to be easy.
Just, you know what? The last time that we tried to do the Edel to MSAL, which was, second stream that we did? It took us a good 8 hours. Over a number of streams just to get everything working. So
I lost your audio. I don't know if I lost your audio or oh no, what's my machine doing? Oh no, stop, please come back.
Oh no,
what happened to my machine? I think my Bluetooth must have I think
The
my Bluetooth
hackers are
device
taking
just,
over. The hackers are taking over.
I couldn't hear you, so my Bluetooth quit working, and then my Bluetooth keyboard also stopped working. So I was like, "Oh my god, what's happened?" Okay, so pretty much the same thing here. We should probably just, I mean, honestly, probably be easier just create one MSAL object, but whatever. I'm trying to keep this code as close to its original as possible. So MSAL builder.get with the user object ID. Don't need that anymore. Don't need our client credential. And then this is going to go do an acquire token silent for the to-do list resource. So acquire token silent on MSAL. And the to-do list in this case, that's the API that we're going to have to call. Correct. And we're also going to have to go get our account. So I'm just going to go back to user profile and grab this little chunk of code that we've been using. So let's go do this. So this is our result, essentially. Only instead of the graph resource ID, we are going to be doing
to do.
Yeah, we're going to be using the to-do resource ID. So, and then this, of course, needs to be an array. And we're going to have to do a .default on this one, which, again, maybe it'd be better that we go and just change the setting, change the configuration, but we'll leave it here so at least we know what we've changed. So .default. And then we've got us an execute async at the bottom here.
You have a semicolon on 61 that will cause you problems.
Okay, so we've got, so this is going to go get our token. So we've changed that. All this looks about the same.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. Just going to go call the.
Look at that. They're using string with uppercase S. Damn.
That's crazy. I haven't seen anything like that before. So then this is again going to go delete the old bad tokens, which whatever. And then we're going to catch our MSAL. Although, honestly, I don't even know why we're catching the MSAL UI required one here. Honestly, we should just, because we're not doing anything about it. So we could just catch the exception and be done. Because all it's going to do is try to re-authenticate the user. And we might as well just catch any exception and say, whatever, fine. And then for posting one, we're going to do pretty much the same thing, which we're going to go
copy pasta.
I'll just, well, now my VM isn't working. I can't.
Oh, no.
My mouse wheel doesn't work. I don't know.
I told you to be wired, man. Everything is wired on my. Oh,
I am wired. What happened to somebody turned off my VM? I wonder if the Thraz man went to go delete it.
I'm gonna cry if you lost all your code. By the way, please tell me Thraz man did not do that.
No, I'm sure it's fine.
Is it one of these spot instances that you pay just pennies and then for that you get the inconvenience of being deleted?
Oh my god, it is. It doesn't get deleted; it just gets shut down. Okay, don't use spot instances. I don't. Well, maybe is it a spot instance? I think it is.
Oh god! RIP to our code. 2 hours worth of effort, man. This is comedy time, honestly.
No. It's not RIP. It's still there. All it does is shut them off. Okay. Tell us, everybody. All right, well, who are we going to raid? Because it's 1:00. We got to go. Who are we going to raid? I need a name. Somebody give me a name.
The timing was perfect, right? The timing was perfect. I don't know if you planned this or if it was just random.
Who are we going to go raid today?
Let's see. We only have Lana currently on stream live. We got GitHub Education. We could raid these guys that talk about open source and stuff. Let's do this.
GitHub All right, Education. Let's go to GitHub Education, everybody.
Let's do this.
Hey, our IT pro friends are going to be here tomorrow, and same time, same place. I can't raid. They don't think they allow raids. So maybe we'll just have to end the show because somebody's going to come on after us on developer. Well, hey, thanks for hanging with us. We're going to keep on rolling with this, and Friday we're going to keep this train going. Tomorrow our IT pro friends are going to be on. Oh, Visual Studio's on. I guess we'll go to Visual Studio, seeing as we've been in Visual Studio for the past little bit. So let's go over to Visual Studio. We'll be back Friday to continue on this. Tomorrow, our IT pro friends will be here, same time, same place. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us today. We had a great time. Join the Discord. Send us an email, 45show@microsoft.com. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and if you need any help. And we will see you all in a couple days.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, developer is rating Lana Lux, even though we tried not to. Oh, well.
communicating.
Anyway, all right. See you, everybody.
That was perfect.